to honor all veterans, men and women, present and past. At Edgewater, we are very proud to be home and family for nearly 60 veterans. It is my pleasure to invite you to join me in welcoming them now.
Hello, I'm Jerry Grant, Chief Executive Officer of ACTS.
And I'm Karen Christensen, President.
Every year on November 11th, we come together as a nation to recognize and celebrate the brave men and women who have dedicated themselves to protecting the freedoms and security that define our country. Our veterans are an extraordinary group whose sacrifices deserve our highest respect and gratitude. These courageous individuals laid the foundation for the freedoms we enjoy, embodying the very spirit of service, liberty, and democracy.
This year's Veterans Day theme is a legacy of loyalty and service. Our veterans should rightfully take pride in their military service, knowing they have defended not only our country, but also the values that unite us all. Today, we extend our sincere thanks to all those within the ACTS family who have served in the military. Their commitment and sacrifices safeguard the very freedoms we cherish, and for this, we are forever grateful.
At ACTS, our mission is centered around providing exceptional services, care, comfort, and security to those we serve, and our veterans are a vital part of that mission. The dedication and sacrifice shown by those individuals inspire us all, reminding us of the importance of serving others and upholding the values of our country. With over 19 million veterans across the United States, each one deserves our deep appreciation and respect. Without their courage, much of what we hold dear today would not be possible.
We are proud to continue our tradition of honoring veterans at ACTS. Many of our residents have served during some of the most challenging times in history, from World War II to conflicts that have shaped the world today. Whether in times of war or peace, their bravery and contributions have been vital in preserving not only our nation's safety, but also that of countless others around the globe.
On this Veterans Day, we offer our heartfelt thanks for the service and sacrifice of every veteran here at Edgewater, at Boca, Pointe, and across the entire ACTS family. Your unwavering dedication to defending freedom and protecting our way of life is truly remarkable. Thank you for all that you have done and for the example you have set for others.
From all of us at ACTS, we salute each of you. It is a privilege to serve you, and we are proud to have you as part of our community. As we observe this day of reflection and gratitude, let us also pray for peace around the world. May God bless our veterans, and may God bless you all.
And may God bless the United States of America.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to see so many beautiful faces this morning and be with you all on this very important day to celebrate our veterans. With that being said, before we get started, I'm going to ask everyone to grab your phones, take your phone up. Everyone hold your phone up in the sky. Just hold it up for me. I want to see your beautiful phones. Everyone hold it up. Okay, that's good. There's a lot of phones in here, right? I love it. Now do me a favor. Do not put it on silent, but turn it off, please. The reason why I ask, because sometimes even on silent, our phone vibrates. We want to make sure that during this program that we give it our full undivided attention and act with respect to our veterans who serve so hard. So please help us by turning your phone off, not on silent, to prevent any mishaps from happening. So I'll give you a second before we start. Thank you. Again, good morning. Today, we gather here to honor the brave men and women who have served in the United States Armed Forces. Veterans Day, as you know, is a day that's set aside not just to remember, but to express our heartfelt gratitude for the sacrifices they have made in defense of our country, our freedoms, and our values. Our veterans, as you see today, is a true embodiment of courage and selflessness. They are individuals who stood up when their country called, putting aside personal ambitions to serve something that's greater than themselves. Whether they served in times of peace or in face of conflict or home or overseas, each one has contributed to the safety and the security that we enjoy every day. Many of us have family members, friends, or neighbors that have worn this uniform. Each veteran has a story that's unique, shaped by their experiences, challenges, and moments of triumph. From World War II to more recent conflicts, veterans have shown us what true dedication looks like. They are the heroes not only for their acts of valor, but for their quiet resolve, their discipline, and their unwavering commitment to our nation. With that being said, I personally, before I get into our invocation this morning, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your service, thank you for your sacrifice, and thank you most importantly for the love of humanity in our country. So with that being said, I'm going to say a prayer this morning. I'm going to ask that you pray in your faith tradition as I pray in mine. So as we pray this morning, first I want to take a 10-second pause to pray for those veterans that's not here today that have passed over the last couple of years here at Edgewater, and those that have passed over the last couple of centuries. And after that 10-second, bow your heads and pray with me. So let us pause for 10 seconds. Heavenly Father, we gather here today in deep gratitude for the men and women who have served in our nation's armed forces. We thank you for their unwavering courage, their selfless service, and their commitment to defending the freedoms of our country. We ask you to bless and protect those who are currently serving and watch over the veterans who have returned home and those that are here today. May they feel honored, valued, and supported, knowing that their sacrifices have not been forgotten. For those who carry unseen wounds, grant them healing, strength, and peace. Today, as we remember the brave souls who gave everything, may we be inspired by their example of devotion, and family. Guide us to uphold these values in our own lives and to care for those who have served with open hearts and helping hands. Lord, let this day not only be one of remembrance, but a call to action, reminding us to serve those who have served us with gratitude and love. In your name we pray. Amen. At this time, I'm going to ask if you're able to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you're not, if you're not able to stand, please remain seated as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. One, two, three. Our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we've watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land and of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Ms. Joyce. At this time, in this moment, we're going to have the salute to service. As your branch is called, please stand. Thank you.
Woodrow Wilson called it the war to end all wars. It was anything but. Germany's invasion of Czechoslovakia and Poland in 1939 returned war to Europe.
In 1940, German aircraft launched nightly bombing raids on British cities. The Blitz lasted 8 months, threatening Britain's survival.
1.5 million people, mostly women and children, were evacuated from their homes. Judy and her family were among them. We still have images of Judy just 2 weeks old in her mother's arms. They were survivors of the bomb that fell directly on their house in Birmingham, destroying it completely. They survived by hiding under the sturdy staircase as the alarm went off.
Superior air defenses and a remarkably resilient air force resulted in Hitler's first major defeat. The RAF was aided by pilots from Poland and from throughout the British Empire, and by American volunteers who flew in Eagle squadrons. And throughout 1940 and 1941, Liberty ships manned by US merchant mariners helped keep Britain in the game.
Meanwhile, Japan invaded China and French Indochina, threatening to dominate all of Asia. And as we know, on December 7th, a day that will live in infamy, Japan attacked the US fleet at Pearl Harbor, drawing the US into what would become the world's most destructive war.
16 million Americans served in the military during World War II. Nearly 300,000 died in combat. But all 16 million were integral to this country's defense for freedom, both for America and for its allies. Of the 16 million, only 66,000 are still alive today, and thankfully, 8 of them are neighbors and friends here at Edgewater. Today, we recognize and celebrate these remarkable veterans from World War II.
Some enlisted at the age of 17. Most served in Asia. Some saw combat, others served in vital support roles. All put their lives on hold to serve their country during a period of war. We recently met with these men to hear their stories, some of which we share with you now.
Polachek, glad that you're here. Now, you enlisted in the Army at the age of 17. Why did you enlist at that age?
Well, I felt as if I had waited till 18, there was no question that I would be drafted and I would be a foot soldier. And I didn't want to be a foot soldier because I had technical skills that I thought would better serve my country. I was skilled as a radio technician, both in repair and operating radio, and knew the Morse code and was using other codes as well.
So you requested assignment to the Army
Signal Corps,
right?
Yeah, that is correct. So I enlisted in the Signal Corps.
And where did they send you?
Well, a very short boot camp in New Jersey, and after 5 weeks of boot camp, I immediately was transferred to Okinawa during the hostilities. And I operated a radio in Okinawa and coded and decoded messages for the higher-ups.
After the Japanese surrender, where were you assigned?
I was then assigned to Japan in the Army of Occupation, where I served for 2.5 years in that capacity.
And then you provided an invaluable function during monsoons. And
that is correct,
typhoons.
because it's no different than Florida, where the wires are down and there's no communication in the normal sense. Then I would provide communication with my radio skills, where I would keep communications open with my radio shack.
And I understand you provided service to the U.S. military in a variety of areas in Japan through a trio that you formed. Can you tell us about the trio?
Yes, well, I was a musician, learned the skills in the civilian life, and wanted to somehow use those skills. I had a violin, and I figured that if I could find a couple other gentlemen who also had those skills, we formed a band. We called it the Fuji Mountain Boys. And we traveled around Japan to the various army camps, providing country western music that they thoroughly enjoyed, and we enjoyed doing it.
Art, thank you so much for your service during World War II and for the things you do to help people here today. You enlisted in 1942, right?
Correct.
What did you do in the Navy? I'm told you were a radio man.
I was a radio man. I used to copy code, and we used to break it down into the language we know.
So you were assigned to the USS Baltimore, is that right?
That's correct.
And the Baltimore was a
heavy cruiser.
Heavy cruiser. And does that mean that you spent a lot of time escorting carriers?
Well, we did some of that in the South Pacific. We had big guns.
Right.
We used to shoot up the islands before the Marines came in.
You survived a kamikaze attack one time, right?
Oh yeah. Yes, we did. We were attacked quite a few times by kamikazes, but we had very good gunners. We had one kamikaze came maybe to the end of this room toward our ship, and all of a sudden it disappeared and shattered.
Did I understand that during one of these attacks, the aircraft carrier that was next to you was sunk, is that right?
We were escorting a small carrier, and during the night it disappeared. Japanese submarine got it. There was no survivors.
Were you involved in supporting the invasion at Wake Island in Okinawa, were you?
We were in Mole Island, all the islands.
All the islands.
We used to go in and we used to bombard the hell out of it.
Sure.
We used to bombard them, and then the Marines went in.
I understand that in the summer of 1944, the USS Baltimore had a special transport mission. Is that right? You had a special visitor on board ship. Who was that?
Franklin D. Roosevelt. We took him up to Russia.
Went to Alaska, right?
Through Alaska.
Yeah.
And he went fishing up there.
Good.
Roosevelt.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I also understand that for a short period of time, you were on Admiral Nimitz's flagship?
Oh, yes. So I was on there for about a week. They don't know why I was transported there in the first place.
Well, I agree with your hat. Not everybody looks this good at 100. And we thank you for your service and for also being here with us today.
You're very welcome.
Harold, thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure, Bob.
This young man was enrolled in Connecticut College of Pharmacy, now the University of Connecticut.
Well, I was drafted out.
Drafted out.
In the spring of 1945, you found yourself living not in a college dorm, but in a tent
on the beach in Cebu Island in the Philippine chain.
That's right. Cebu Island, next to Cebu City, and it was known as Cebu.
See conflict there?
No, the Japanese were up in the hills, and I think the intent of the army at that time was to keep them up there.
Sure.
And of course, subsequent to that was the armistice.
Right. And then after the surrender of the Japanese, you were reassigned where?
Yeah, well, we ended up in Yokohama, and I was reassigned to Sendai, Japan, northern Japan. So here I had my great pharmacy career. I had 3/4 of one semester in pharmacy. And of course, I ended up in Sendai in a pharmacy clinic. I had 13 men under me, and there was one doctor involved. And there I spent the remainder of the time.
So you were engaged in treating cuts, bruises, non-combat wounds, but you also did something special for the GIs. What was that?
Well, you know, some of the boys had a weekend or maybe a little more off, and if they really lived it up. And if they were a little indiscreet, of course, they came back for an examination. And if it was indicated, I would shoot them with penicillin, which was a new drug at that time, fairly new. The Army had it. I don't think the civilian population had it widespread.
During those times when you were not shooting up the GIs, you had a chance to experience a little bit more Japan. What was your impression?
Well, we had spare time, of course, and I must tell you that the Japanese are a gentle people. They have nothing to do with the warlords that we read about or heard about, and the kamikaze people that killed themselves for the honor. They're gentle, homey people.
Do I understand you spent an evening at Mount Fuji?
Oh, I had the opportunity to climb Mount Fuji. It's 12,000 feet. I did it with a buddy, and we were up there overnight. It was bitter cold, but it was an accomplishment.
Well, Harold, thank you for your service, and thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you for asking me, Bob.
That was beautiful, beautiful. On the night before these interviews were taped, Dr. Sidney Bezvanik was admitted to the hospital, and we all wish him well. In 1943, while studying chemical engineering at the University of Florida, Sidney Bezvanik enlisted in the Navy. Why? Because the Navy promised clean sheets and 3 square meals a day. Also, the Navy would allow him to complete his degree before reporting to basic training. Dr. B, as he's affectionately known to all of us, was commissioned in 1944 and served 2.5 years aboard LSM-5, a small amphibious troop carrier, first as an engineering officer and later as executive officer. LSM-5 participated in the Battle of Okinawa and was instrumental in sinking several Japanese torpedo boats. His ship was then directed to Tinian Island to pick up Seabees who had just constructed new runways for B-29s. There was also discussion of 2 new bombs that they had received, each in its own container. After Japan surrendered, LSM-5 redeployed to Korea, where, according to Dr. B, the greatest threat to their well-being came from a commanding officer whose moral code called for all medicinal liquor to be dumped overboard and all beer placed under guard, denying the crew a little reprieve, unlike the story we just heard. Returning to civilian life, Dr. B taught at the University of Miami for 24 years and later served as provost and dean of the graduate school. In 2020, Dr. B moved to Edgewater, where he organized our library and moderated many great course offerings. Dr. B is 102 years old. Too bad he can't be here.
We're here with Jerry Callender, who was in the U.S. Navy in the late stages of World War II. Now, Jerry, you told me that you enlisted at the age of 17.
About 17 and a quarter.
17 and a quarter. And, but you had to get your parents' permission.
Yes, they wouldn't sign it. It took me 2 weeks to drive them crazy until they finally said, go already, get out of here, give us some peace and quiet. And so then I went to Sampson up in New York, and they took us on the Lehigh Valley Railroad. They took us to the west coast to Treasure Island.
Right.
And then from there, we got on an Army transport and headed for Pearl Harbor. But while we were going, the war, Japan suddenly surrendered. They moved the ship to Japan, and we all got assigned on these different minesweepers.
So minesweepers, as I understand it, would detect the mines below the
they
surface?
had 2 lines that went down with a cutter at the very end.
Right.
And it would cut the
mooring lines.
And it would pop to the surface, and then we would shoot them and hopefully sink them instead of explode them.
And what happened if the mines were to explode?
They'd wipe us all out. But we were lucky. We sunk most of the mines.
Good. And you were really busy because you were at one of the big Japanese harbors, trying to clear the harbors at Sasebo, right?
The Oklahoma City, a cruiser, was in charge of all the minesweepers, and they would set us out and send us to different areas to sweep.
And so even after the Japanese surrendered, there were some who still wanted to carry on the battle, right?
Yes, yeah. In fact, I had a duel with one guy.
Yeah, and how about one night you saw a boat with Japanese in it coming towards your...
Two rowboats. There must have been around 14 or 15 Japs with rifles shooting at us, and we shot back at them.
How about your officer in charge? Didn't you help him?
Yeah, I had to load his pistol and aim him in the right direction and pull him down. He was just standing there like a schmuck.
And later in your Navy career, you were assigned to a Navy command staff
It was
ship.
an amphibious group command ship, and I was in the payroll. They found out that I had done payrolls before, so they put me in dispersing.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us and letting us do this. Bernie, you were only 17 when you graduated from high school, right? What prompted you to enlist?
Well, it came towards the end of the 17-year period when I was closer to 18, and I felt it was either being drafted into the Army, and at that time my uncles was in the Merchant Marine and one was in the Navy, and they both pushed me into the Navy. I was in the Merchant Marine for about 6 months, and then I decided to sign up with the Navy, and I went into the Navy at that time.
And when you were with the Merchant Marine, where'd you go? What did you do?
For Merchant Marine, my main trip was to we went from New Jersey to Texas to pick up grain, and then we went to North Africa to unload, and then we went to Italy to pick up some of the men that are being discharged at that time. The war was just about over in Germany, and then we brought them back to the States.
I read that almost 10,000 merchant mariners lost their lives, right?
Right, that was during the convoy. See, they were being blown up by the Germans at that time.
733 merchant ships were sunk.
Right.
Right? And you guys were taking millions and millions of tons of cargo and troops to foreign countries. You guys did the logistics thing that most people.
It was a thankless. It was a thankless side. All we saw was Army, Navy, and the Air Force. We never saw any of these about the Liberty. These guys really supplied everything.
You said that you did remain on active duty after the German surrender, and
yes, I was on active duty from 1945 to 1947. I was on active duty.
And what were you doing at that time?
Towards the end, I was attached to an air group down in Virginia, and then in 1949, I got married. And a year later, in December of 1950, in December, the war broke out in Korea. And within 10 days after that, I was recalled because I was in the reserve. Even though my wife was pregnant, they took me and they shipped me out to California, and they assigned me to an air group that was on an aircraft carrier on the coast of Korea.
Amazing. So you are a veteran not only of World War II, but also the Korean
Also the
conflict.
Korean. The Korean, I was there from 1950 December to April 1952.
Bernie, we thank you for your service and for taking the time to be with us today.
So today, we've put a spotlight on some special veterans, right? Namely, Edgewater's World War II veterans. But let us not forget that today is about all veterans. That's veterans, both men and women, both young and old. Those who fought on the front lines and those who were behind the lines, right? Sailors, soldiers, airmen, Marines, guardsmen, reservists. But veterans aren't just a category, just a group. They are, like all of us, individuals, and all with individual stories. And if we really want to appreciate veterans, we need to appreciate their stories. Because a veteran might be an inspiring high school teacher who learned leadership and motivation while serving in the Marines. A veteran might be, an emergency room nurse who honed her skills under mortar fire in a field hospital in Vietnam. A veteran might be a retired banker who once flew B-17s over Germany at the age of 23. Or a veteran might be a U.S. senator who lost both her legs flying combat missions in Iraq. And today, a veteran may very well be a survivor of multiple tours in Vietnam who now lives homeless on the streets. And a veteran might be a grandfather, like some of us, right? Still having difficulty explaining to one's family what that wartime experience really was. And finally, a veteran might very well be a really diligent, enthusiastic young man learning to walk again, this time with artificial limbs, after having done a tour in Afghanistan. So veterans, many of them are famous. Most of us are not. But we're all special. Veterans are special because they, like the veterans here in these first 5 rows, all served. And therefore, it is only fitting that at this particular time on this day, we say thank you all for your service.
My goodness, I can't believe I have to follow Bob. And for some, military service was just the beginning of a life of service, like Nick Vislacki, who served not in just one war, but 3. Nick was born in Czechoslovakia in 1920. At the age of 7, he, with his parents and brother, moved to the States. In late 1941, Nick enlisted in the Navy, where he was issued long johns, winter boots, and cold weather parkas for sub-patrols in the North Atlantic. But when Pearl Harbor was attacked, Nick immediately got redirected to patrol the South Pacific for 4 years with only, you guessed it, his long johns, winter boots, and cold weather parkas. It was in the Navy where Nick met the love of his life, Geraldine. with whom he had 2 sons. Nick remained in the reserves, but when the Korean War broke out, he returned to active duty with the Air Force. But before we let Nick tell the rest of the story, we want to also thank Nick for the many, many years he spent in what was then called Nick's Workshop, where he spent many long hours repairing anything residents brought him, all done with a big smile. In 3 weeks, Nick will be 104 years old.
You went into the Navy, right? And the Navy was going to send you to Iceland.
We were scheduled to go to Iceland to do patrol duty up there, anti-sub patrol. World War II came along. I got there the 11th of January.
And then after that, you were on patrol in the South Pacific, were you?
After that, we patrolled out of Hawaii.
Yeah.
Patrolled all over the South Pacific.
After World War II, you went into the reserves, is that right?
I did that in the service for a while. I joined the Air Force Reserve. And when Korea came along, I was recalled to active duty. I already had 10 years in the military, so I decided just to stay on,
on active duty?
On active duty.
With the Air Force?
The Air Force, yeah.
Right. And then, remarkably, you were also in Vietnam, is that right?
After Korea, got back and stayed out a while. Got back into the service, Vietnam.
Right.
Stayed there for a year. Then I had enough time in the service just to continue.
That makes you a unique veteran, to have been in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Yes. I touched on all 3 of them.
You know, we say,
fortunately. Yeah.
Nick, that is wonderful, and we say thank you for your service.
We are proud to recognize one last World War II veteran, a veteran whose whole life has been one of service, S. Buddy Harris. Buddy was born on January 4, 1926 in the Bronx. By the time he was 9, a squadron of model airplanes flew over his bed, and Buddy engaged them in war games. For his 15th birthday present, his mother enrolled him in flight school at Florida, New York, and in 1943, at the age of 17, Buddy had received his pilot's license and joined the Army Air Corps' Cadet Pilot Training Program. After 9 months training at Fort Worth, Texas, Buddy was assigned to the U.S. Army Air Force program, flying bombing and observation missions against Nazi submarines off the east coast of the United States. He was discharged from active duty in 1946, remaining in the Air Force Reserve and achieving the rank of colonel. After active duty, Buddy attended the City College of New York, studying marketing and advertising, and formed Harris Advertising in New Jersey. He later merged with Carter Advertising, where he met and married Phyllis Frank, who was their business manager. In 1956, Buddy became regional director for Gala Wines in New Jersey. During this period, he and Phyllis had 2 sons. Subsequently, Buddy's career became more varied,
including a successful stint as campaign manager for a mayoral election in Woodbridge Township, and then as executive director for an urban renewal program there. Under his leadership, the township embarked upon one of the first highway beautification projects in the country. Lady Bird Johnson noted the project and engaged Buddy to serve as technical director of her beautification campaign. In the 1960s, when Congress finally designated funds for development of a national monument on Roosevelt Island, Buddy was there. Shortly thereafter, Buddy and Phyllis moved to Marco Island in Florida here, where they remained for 20 wonderful years as the island transformed from a sleepy fishing village into a beautiful community. Not surprisingly, Buddy wasn't ready to rest on his laurels yet. So Buddy joined the Civil Air Patrol Squadron, which conducted sundown patrols along the South Florida coast and thousands of islands. In Piper Cubs and Stetsons, Buddy and his squadron flew search and rescue missions, saving over 100 people and providing tips to the Coast Guard on suspected drug trafficking operations. Buddy would serve as director of the flight program. At this point, Buddy and Phyllis decided it was time to enjoy some leisure time together. So in 2001, they moved here to Edgewater at Boca Pointe. Buddy's leisure included becoming an accomplished artist, playing a major role in Edgewater's Veterans Day ceremonies for many years, organizing and running a computer club, and hosting Saturday night bingo for the residents. Over the years, Buddy has received numerous military, governmental, and community medals, citations, and awards for his outstanding service, both to his community and to the country. This is probably best reflected in a video clip that WPTV, Channel 5, ran in December 2014, shortly after Buddy was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal on December 10 of 2014 in a ceremony at the U.S. Capitol. Here's the clip.
That's a life history right there.
Colonel S. Buddy Harris has accomplished a lot in 87 years.
Commendation awards, Distinguished Service Awards.
He's running out of room on the wall of his Boca Raton apartment for all his medals.
They're all there, a lot of them.
But he can surely find space for the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest award given to civilians.
That's the peak. That's the top. You can't get one higher than that.
Last Wednesday, Congress recognized Harris and about 45 other original members of the Civil Air Patrol.
I am so in awe that I still can't get over it.
The group, made strictly of volunteers, launched during World War II, before we had an Air Force. Harris flew over the New England coast, targeting German submarines.
And we took care of them and sent them back to where they belonged.
These days, the Civil Air Patrol supports the Air Force in non-combat missions. Harris is still involved, even on call for a search and rescue if needed. He says volunteering always has and always will keep him motivated.
I always consider it to be the rent I pay for my place on earth, serving others.
In Boca Raton, Charlie Keegan, WPTV News Channel 5.
I'd like to invite Buddy Harris up. So for 23 years, Edgewater has been blessed to have you and Phyllis here as part of our family. And our country has even been more blessed by your years of service in this great nation of ours. Colonel Harris, thank you for your life of service.
Thank you, Susan. I look at this full standing room only audience with a great thrill. Looking at all of the events that brought me here today, I am looking back on a lot of issues that are a great pride in my life. I'd like to review just a few of them because, to me, they're the steps on the ladder up to where I am today. At 7 years old, I volunteered to be a bass drummer of my kindergarten band. And the reason I picked bass drummer was because it was the biggest drum hanging from my shoulders, and I followed the band all by myself. My mother was sitting in the audience. She was so proud. At 10 years old, my sister Miriam Linewall, and some of you have met Miriam because she was a resident here for 8 years. Miriam peculiarly shared a bedroom with me, and in our 2 separate beds. Between the beds was a metal cage in which she had a monkey. And every night when she went to sleep, she would put her head into the cage, and the monkey would sleep on it. Towards morning, the monkey would climb up on the door, sit up on the door, and watch me at bed. And no sooner did I open my eyes, he would jump off the bedroom door, grab my hair, and pull it. This is every single morning. So one day, I looked up, and I saw him up there, and I had a bucket of water. So when he jumped down at me, he splashed in there, and my sister pulled her hand out, and he really got frustrated. So that was my monkey. And that was the same monkey that President Roosevelt pointed to when he was passing in a parade, and my sister was there with the monkey on her shoulder. And he pointed to the monkey, took off his hat, and tipped it. And that was a great moment in my life. For moving on to when I was 15 years of age, for my birthday, my mother and dad gave me a birthday gift of a flying school. And I soloed, believe it or not, as a pilot at the age of 15. It was quite a thrilling moment, and curiously, before I went to my solo, my mother said, "You must promise me you will only fly low and slow." And I said to my mother, "I promise. But if I had fallen that promise, I wouldn't be here today." But that was curious. Another curious thing was I volunteered to the Civil Air Patrol at the age of 15 to be a bike volunteer, taking messages back and forth from the headquarters to the various squadrons on my bike. The reason they had that, we had no telephones, we had no iPads, we had no iPhones, we had no computers. It was bare stones, man and woman and everybody, against the World War II. I volunteered right after being a bike career at the age of 15. I volunteered to the Army Air Corps. And because they were so short of pilots, even though I was only 17, I joined them, and I became, like you guys remember from the Air Force, a 90-day wonder. That's, see, my Air Force guys are biting their heads. As an Air Force wonder in 90 days, they took you from a peaceful pilot to a killer fighting pilot. And that's where I was back when I was 17. 11 days prior to my graduation from the Army Air Corps, General Hap Arnold issued a memorandum to all the Air Force bases that nobody under the age of 18 would be permitted to continue in their flight training. And they gave us 3 choices of what we could do. We could either leave the Air Corps with a discharge and take a draft card to be drafted into the Army or the Navy. or you could join the Navy, or you could join the Marine Corps, whatever you wish. Or you could join the Civil Air Patrol. I had no idea what the Civil Air Patrol was all about, but it represented flying, and I loved flying. So I joined the Civil Air Patrol. Going through all my life in the World War II, which I won't detail you with, I went through 3 military colleges. I was the faculty of one, and as Jane said, I received the very proudly Congressional Medal of Honor. I graduated 3 military colleges, and I served on the faculty of one. I proudly earned, as Jane told you, the very proud Congressional Medal of Honor for what I did during World War II, fighting Nazi submarines and sinking 2 of them. So our guys who joined from the 10,000 90-day wonders joined the Civil Air Patrol, and 10,000 of us were fighting the anti-Nazi submarines that were sinking all of our many, many vessels that were carrying vital supplies to Europe and to our troops. So the Civil Air Patrol was assigned and trained to fight the anti-Nazi submarines. And our 10,000 members did one hell of a job. It took us 14 months of sinking Nazi submarines before their Admiral Karl Dönitz pulled their submarines all back from America and brought them back to the North Sea. When the war ended, they interviewed the Admiral and they said, "You were sinking millions and millions and millions of tons of vital supplies. Why did you ever pull your submarines back?" And he looked at the reporter and said, "It was those damn yelly airplanes." And that was us, the Civil Air Patrol. So that proudly we look back on that and realize that we actually saved our country from an invasion from Hitler and Japan. Incredibly, if we were not set up and vitalized and actually was in action, we today probably would be speaking German and Japanese. Now, that's a hard thing to indicate and absorb. All of these guys and gals sitting here proudly have done the same exact thing during their days of service. So I look back on all of these guys and gals and I say, thank you guys for all of your service. You served magnificently. You won us the toughest war we have ever fought, World War II, when every single country in Europe and every one of many of the islands in the Pacific, we were invaded. But no, not a Hitler or a Tojo would ever dare come to the United States because they thought we were overwhelmed with protective forces. If they ever knew the overwhelming force was me and a few other guys, we would all be talking German and Japanese. So God bless you all for all the fun that I've had in my life and how proud I am of having served with you veterans. I only thank Susan George, Bob Taylor, and all of his committee for this tremendous experience and fabulous opportunity to recognize what I have done. So I love you all, I appreciate you all, and I salute you all.
Thank you, Colonel Harris. I'd like to thank everyone for attending our special Veterans Day service. A special thank you to Bob Taylor and his team of residents for putting together a heartfelt tribute. After our service ends, I invite you to take a closer look at the recognition board, which is located to my left. This was created by Mary Lou Gladstone. Thank you, Mary Lou. You are all invited to attend a special Veterans Day lunch in the Wheaton's room downstairs following the close of our program. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Judd Bernstein, who will now close and give a closing prayer, as well as Joyce Bacharach, who will close us finally as she leads us in America the Beautiful. Please welcome Judd.
The prayer that I am going to say was written by a chaplain associated with the National Museum of American Jewish Military, and his name is Chaplain Michael Bloom. Give thanks to the Eternal, for God is good. His mercy endures forever. O Sovereign of the universe, bless our nation, the United States of America, safeguard it and its ideals of freedom and liberty. Bless our veterans, our defenders of liberty, who brave danger to defend us from tyranny. Grant healing and recovery to those who have been wounded physically or emotionally. Keep their spirits high and make them resilient in the aftermath of danger and loss. Grant our veterans opportunities to attest to the sincerity of their gratitude as we today attest our gratitude to them and our reliance on you. May they find spiritual joy in love of home and family and faithfulness to your Torah. We pray for individual and collective peace and tranquility. And let us all say, Amen.
At this time, if you could stand, please stand as Ms. Joyce singing America the Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God plead his trace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you, thank you. As you exit the auditorium, I'm going to start from the back row first so everyone's not tumbled over. But also be advised, we have lunch in the Wheaton room. So when you leave here, we will be serving lunch, a complimentary lunch in the Wheaton room, and you can take that lunch into the bistro and enjoy it there. So we'll see you all downstairs. Thank you again for coming, and we'll see you at next year's service. Blessings to you and all our veterans.